In life, love often comes at the most unexpected moments. The story of a successful American entrepreneur clearly shows this. At almost 60 years old, he met a woman who was half his age. However, this relationship, which was based on material interests, led to unpleasant consequences. On a quiet summer evening of the 8th of August, 2017, in the tranquil district of Upper Makefield, Pennsylvania, everything began as usual. Two female employees of a pharmaceutical company decided to visit their colleague, the 64-year-old sales representative, Mike McNew. His lack of availability during the day worried them, as such behavior was completely untypical for this reliable person. When they arrived at the house, they noticed Mike's car in the garage. Everything looked normal, as if the homeowner was at home. The ringing at the door remained unanswered, as did the persistent knocking. Complete silence reigned in the house. When they discovered the unlocked front door, the concerned colleagues decided to check if everything was in order. They entered the house and called for Mike. Silence. In the living room, they noticed his silhouette in the armchair and felt relief for a moment, as they assumed he had fallen asleep. But as they approached, they realized that the situation was much more serious. The disturbed women immediately dialed the emergency number 911. One of them was so shaken that she could not speak coherently. Her colleague took the initiative and described the situation to the dispatcher. Following the operator's instructions, she checked Mike's condition. There was no pulse, no breathing. The dispatcher sent emergency services to the scene. The story of Mike McNew began in the year 1953 in Pennsylvania. Later, the family moved to Williamsport, Maryland. He grew up in a well-protected family where love and mutual understanding prevailed. After school, he went to college and started a family with his school friend. Their feelings were sincere and mutual. They lived like a typical middle-class family in a cozy house near the coast. Mike always strived for professional development. After starting his career as a successful insurance agent, he later switched to the pharmaceutical industry. Here, true success awaited him. By founding his own company, he could enable his family to live comfortably. Mike was a successful businessman who enabled his family to live a prosperous life. But family happiness did not last. 3 to 4 years after the birth of the children, the spouses decided to separate. Despite the separation, they maintained a cordial relationship and cared for the children together. Son and daughter visited their father frequently, and the former spouses maintained a friendly relationship. The children later remembered that they never heard their parents argue, neither before, during, nor after the divorce. Their mutual respect remained even after the official divorce in early 2000. Mike decided to begin a new chapter of his life in the quiet community of Township Upper Makefield in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, a cozy town with only 8,000 inhabitants. He intended to continue developing his business until his well-deserved retirement. As a bachelor, Mike enjoyed all the pleasures of life. His impressive villa was located directly on the river. He enjoyed riding his private jet skis, developed a passion for art, and began collecting valuable objects. Although he was not chasing world masterpieces, his collection filled him with sincere joy. Mike was in no hurry to change his bachelor status until fate brought him together in the year 2012 with the 28-year-old Jennifer Morris, who was raising a child alone. A mutual attraction ignited between them. The relationship developed rapidly. Soon, Mike invited his chosen one to a vacation in the Caribbean. Their feelings showed particularly intensely during this trip. He brought along 2 jet skis and quads for joint excursions. At 60 years old, almost at retirement age, he fell in love like a teenager, completely enchanted by this woman. His relatives were amazed by his transformation. In the year 2015, after 3 years of relationship, Mike got his first tattoo in honor of Jennifer. At the same time, he offered her to move in with him, which she accepted. The businessmen surrounded her with care and comfort. A separate room was set up for Jennifer's child. Their happiness lasted until the 8th of August 2017, when an unforeseen incident occurred in the house. At this time, their romance with the woman who was half his age had already lasted 5 years, and they were actively preparing their wedding. Colleagues found Mike in his house in a concerning condition. Initially, heart problems were suspected. The arriving emergency forces found Mike in his armchair. His head was leaning back. His hands rested on his knees. From the outside, one might have thought he was slumbering, but the situation proved to be far more serious. Traces of the incident were visible on the floor and on the clothing. The circumstances indicated that what had happened was not related to heart problems. A characteristic trace was found between the eyebrows. The investigators now had to find out, was this the result of external influence or his own decision? The crime experts who arrived at the scene immediately noticed unusual details. The thesis of acting alone was not confirmed. No weapon was found nearby, which indicated the presence of a foreign person at this time. When examining the living room about 10 meters from the place where Mike was found, the specialists discovered a cartridge case of caliber .380. It was remarkable that everything in the room had remained in its place, without signs of a struggle. Apparently, everything came unexpectedly for the homeowner. On Mike's wrist remained a characteristic trace of his disappeared watch. The pockets of his clothing were turned inside out. From the office on the ground floor, a laptop and a mobile phone as well as other valuables were missing. At first glance, the situation resembled an ordinary house burglary where the owner accidentally encountered an uninvited guest. New important details were discovered in the bedroom. 2 firearms were registered in Mike McNew's name. Only one was found in the house. From the Smith & Wesson caliber .380, only an empty holster remained. Later, it turned out, exactly this weapon, which the owner kept for defense, was used in the incident and disappeared afterwards. The absence of any traces and damage indicated that the visitor was familiar with the layout of the house. He knew where the firearms and valuables were located and how to leave the building unnoticed. The investigators began a thorough examination of the businessman's environment and brought in additional specialists. The thesis of a robbery became increasingly unlikely. Despite the disappearance of Mike's personal belongings, many valuables remained untouched. For example, the art collection, where each exhibit was artfully illuminated with a separate lamp, remained completely preserved. Everything indicated that the 64-year-old pharmaceutical representative encountered someone who had personal motives. The disappearance of the electronic devices did not appear coincidental. Possibly important information was stored on them. The integrity of the doors and windows showed that the visitor either had keys or was let in by the homeowner himself. In investigating Mike's biography, the investigators found that he was a peaceful person without conflicts and enemies. Particular attention was drawn to his life partner, the 33-year-old Jennifer Morris. The neighbors described her as the fiancée of the older businessman, but after the incident, she seemed to have vanished into thin air, which raised many questions for the law enforcement agencies. The people in her environment described Jennifer as a withdrawn personality who was reluctant to reveal details from her life. Only her difficult relationship with her mother was known. In rare open moments, she told of her difficult childhood in the parental home, where she experienced inappropriate behavior from 2 friends of her mother. The mother did not believe her daughter, which led to deep psychological trauma. The situation became unbearable. Jennifer dropped out of school and left her home, describing this time as a phase of deep depression. On her own, she found her calling in repairing motorcycles. The passion for 2-wheeled vehicles developed into an obsession. She bought herself a sport motorcycle and frequently shared stories on social media about nighttime rides at maximum speed. Jennifer's striking appearance was complemented by distinctive tattoos, lettering on the chest, the image of a revolver on the bicep, and a grinning skeleton on the arm. At 20 years old, she became a mother, but the father of the child quickly disappeared from her life. To feed her child, she combined her work as a mechanic with performances at the club Prestige in Pennsylvania. There she met in the year 2012 the 59-year-old Mike McNew, a regular guest of the establishment. After a casual conversation, he invited her to dinner. Jennifer agreed, but set one condition: the settlement of her electricity debts in the amount of $1,200. Thus began their regular meetings in expensive restaurants and trendy clubs. Mike was generous with gifts: jewelry, a motorcycle, a car, trips. Jennifer called him Daddy, and he was flattered by the attention of his attractive companion. Fate had its own plans for Jennifer. In Mike, she saw a chance to change her life. They shared much, including the feeling of being outsiders in society. In the wealthy businessman, she found not only financial support, but also emotional warmth. In the year 2015, they moved in together. Initially, everything went harmoniously, but time brought changes. The neighbors reported serious disagreements some months before the incident and mentioned a loud argument after which the couple allegedly separated. Despite the cooled relationship, they continued living under one roof. And now, after the incident, Jennifer's sudden disappearance raised many questions. These were the witness statements of the neighbors collected by the investigators. Jennifer seemed to have vanished into thin air, despite intensive searching. The investigators decided to speak with Mike's children, who at this moment were trying to process the shocking news about their father. The family immediately came together. Patrick hurried from Pittsburgh, his sister and mother from Maryland. In the parental home where they met, Patrick shared with the investigators his opinion about his father's relationship. According to his words, he never took the connection with the dancer from the club seriously, as he considered her too uncouth and self-interested for a lasting relationship. The relatives and friends of the businessman tried several times to bring him to reason and warned of possible consequences of this relationship. Their concerns seemed not unfounded. A telling incident occurred at Patrick's wedding in June 2016. The son did not want Jennifer at the celebration. Mike, who did not want to leave his companion alone, simply did not appear at the ceremony. Despite the family's dissatisfaction, the man continued the relationship with his young chosen one. He even made her the beneficiary of insurance policies of considerable amount, about $500,000. At this time, her tendency toward forbidden substances and possible affairs was already known. The relationship with Jennifer had significant impact on the relationship between father and son. Many suspected that she intentionally sowed discord to gain sole control over the finances of her wealthy companion. In the year 2017, the situation worsened. Jennifer began to distance herself. She could disappear without warning and return late at night without giving explanations. Her interest in the relationship clearly diminished. During this time, she resorted more frequently to forbidden substances, which led to serious health problems, and was arrested twice for their possession. Additionally, she caused an incident with a cyclist whom she had cut off on the street. Mike continued to support his girlfriend and paid the fines and court costs for 2 proceedings, about $4,000 monthly. Shortly before the incident, as the children told, Mike shared his plans to end the relationship with Jennifer and cancel the upcoming wedding. For her, this meant the loss of everything. She would have had to pay the court costs herself, would have lost the luxurious house and the accustomed lifestyle that her wealthy companion enabled her to have. Patrick and Kathy, Mike's children, had no doubts about the motives of the incident. It was only about money. In their opinion, Jennifer could not control her emotions when she understood that she might lose her accustomed lifestyle. The medical examination established the time frame of the incident. It occurred 24 to 48 hours before the employees found Mike in the office. The specialists determined that the incident happened at close range. The examination showed that the projectile split into two parts upon impact. One part hit a vital area, which led to immediate consequences. The law enforcement agencies concentrated all efforts on searching for the main suspect, Jennifer Morrissey. At this time, she was under supervision for a traffic offense. The police counted on her visit for the mandatory report to the probation officer. The calculation paid off. On the 10th of August, 4 days after the incident, Jennifer came to the office to pay fees and report. She mentioned to the officer that she had seen the news about Mike's incident and was shaken. The duty officer immediately informed the investigators. The situation seemed strange. The information about the incident appeared almost immediately in the media and social networks. Why did Jennifer wait 4 days? The investigators arranged a meeting with her for the next day. They did not reveal their suspicions and only said they needed to ask some questions about Mike. At the same time, they applied for permission to check her communications. But Jennifer, who apparently sensed something, did not appear for the meeting. She disappeared again for several days. Such behavior did not correspond to the image of a person who experienced a loss and wants to help the investigations. From the investigators' experience, people act this way when they need time. Normally, people at such moments prepare excuses or try to go underground. For Jennifer, this was risky. She was obligated to report regularly to the police. Missing the reports would have automatically brought her additional difficulties. An arrest was not yet possible. Solid evidence was lacking. While the investigators waited for Jennifer's appearance, they continued gathering information. They spoke with a close friend of Mike. This person reported a recent call from McNew's, in which Mike shared his concerns. He had found out the identity of Jennifer's companion, a man with the nickname the Merciless. According to Mike's words, this character gave cause for serious concern. The situation became risky, and he planned to end the relationship with his fiancée to ensure his own safety. Behind the pseudonym was hidden Charles Kuler, a well-known figure of the underworld with a long prison history. His file contained numerous serious offenses, especially in connection with prohibited substances. His last prison sentence ended shortly before the incident with Mike. After Charles's release, Jennifer immediately moved in with him, although many of her things still remained in the businessman's house. She came by regularly to get them, and Mike threatened to put them in storage to end these visits. According to Mike's friend, the woman's relationship with another person worried him, although he himself did not want to have conflicts with certain social circles. Mike simply decided to end the relationship. At this time, Jennifer and Charles had already made their marriage plans public on social media. What could a simple employee of a pharmaceutical company offer compared to an influential businessman? Jennifer had felt drawn to a special environment since her youth. She grew up among complex people. Charles Kuler, her new chosen one, was a well-known personality in these circles. In the course of his activities, he had earned a certain reputation. His dominant character and determination seemed to attract the dancer. The law enforcement agencies recognized that the investigation had entered a new phase. There was a main suspect, a person who was capable of serious actions against an older man. The suspicion arose that Jennifer's new companion came with her to the ex-partner. A fight broke out, or they planned to take something, but Mike's presence disturbed them. Just at this time, Jennifer missed a mandatory meeting with the probation officer, which provided grounds for her arrest. On the 25th of August 2017, the police arrived at the motorcycle workshop where Jennifer worked. She was arrested for violating probation conditions, which allowed the investigators to check possible involvement in the incident with the pharmaceutical supplier. Later, a cellmate who cooperated with the police reported Jennifer's strange behavior and her confession about intentional actions against Mike. During the interrogation, the investigators shared their suspicions, but she refused to testify and turned to a lawyer. The woman obviously knew something, but the information was not quick to obtain. At this time came the approval to check the communication devices of possible participants. In the message exchange between Jennifer and Mike, a disturbing dialogue was found. The man wrote to his ex-partner that every uninvited guest in his house must expect consequences. Apparently, he had serious concerns about his safety. After this message, communication broke off. Jennifer's phone signal was located near Mike's house during the message exchange. The connection broke at 21:45. This confirmed her presence nearby at an important time. Then, according to the data, Jennifer drove about 20 kilometers south to Charles's trailer. She reached the location around 11 p.m., after which she no longer moved. More interesting appeared the activity of Mike's phone. Until 1 o'clock at night it was in the house, then it moved to the river. At 1:30 the signal disappeared. Presumably the device got into the water. The question arose: who brought the phone there if Jennifer was already gone? An electronics expert discovered that her phone had connected to Mike's home Wi-Fi on the 6th of August 2007 around 21:45. Given the short range of the router, she definitely had to be in the house. In the course of further investigations, the law enforcement agencies found an additional mobile phone that belonged to Mike. The device was password protected, and there was a danger of data loss with incorrect entry of the combination. Fortunately, a list of passwords that Jennifer used was found on Mike's computer. Thanks to this find, the specialists managed to gain access to the device, which led to important discoveries. It turned out that Mike was communicating intensively with Jennifer shortly before the incident. Despite attempts to delete the correspondence, the experts were able to restore the messages. The content of the dialogues proved to be tense. Mike intended to contact the FBI with information that could have led to a long prison sentence for Charles. Understandably, the latter did not like this turn of events. The investigators suspected that this was exactly the trigger for the subsequent events. When checking Charles Kuler's own phone, it turned out that he reacted quite calmly, while Jennifer showed clear concern. In the following messages, Mike proposed a compromise. He was ready to refrain from contacting the FBI if Jennifer would return to him and end the relationship with Charles. Mike's last message was a declaration of love that remained unanswered. Further examination of Jennifer's social networks brought interesting details to light. On the day after the incident, she began actively spreading contradictory information among her acquaintances. To some, she told of aggressive behavior toward an older businessman. To others, she told of Mike's independent decision. And to still others, she assured that she had long since broken off contact with him and knew nothing. The investigators evaluated this as an attempt to create informational chaos. The couple's involvement in the incident became obvious, and their statements were needed. In conversation with the investigators, Charles surprisingly shared his version of events. According to his words, he had nothing to do with the incident. Everything happened through Jennifer's fault. That evening, she came back agitated and told that Mike confronted her with a firearm after an unpleasant conversation. In the attempt to disarm him, the tragedy happened. Frightened, she left the scene. Later, Jennifer asked Charles to drive her back to Mike. She wanted to check his condition and possibly provide help. Charles, who did not want to be involved, asked his friend Jerry, who lived nearby in a trailer with his mother, to accompany Jennifer. During the investigation, Jerry began cooperating with the law enforcement agencies and told important details about that evening. He confirmed that he had driven Jennifer to the house by the river, although he initially did not understand the true purpose of the trip. However, when they arrived at the location, the picture became clear. Jerry noticed inconsistencies in Jennifer's statements about an alleged physical altercation. The situation in the house spoke a completely different language. According to his statements, the homeowner was simply sitting in the armchair. When they arrived, Jennifer did not even try to check his condition or offer help. Instead, she went searching for valuables. She took the watch from her ex-partner's hand, took the laptop and threw his phone into the river. After that, Jerry brought her to Charles's trailer. The investigation revealed DNA traces of Jennifer on the pockets of her former partner's clothing, which she had searched. Charles, her current partner, had a watertight alibi. Shortly before the incident, he had had a serious traffic accident. At this time, he moved around in a wheelchair, could barely walk, and was physically unable to be involved in the incident. He also emphasized that he was on probation and understood very well. Any legal problems were absolutely taboo for him. The investigators found his arguments convincing and confirmed that he was indeed recovering from the accident at the specified time. On the 29th of September 2017, Jennifer Morris appeared in court for intentional actions, material enrichment, and concealment of evidence. The court hearing was scheduled for the 24th of January 2019. The prosecution connected her act with a series of preceding events. The main motive was that her wealthy partner refused to continue financing her extravagant lifestyle and ended the relationship. The last straw was his intention to turn to the FBI. Additionally, Jennifer hoped to gain a significant advantage. She claimed an insurance benefit of about $500,000. All these facts were supported by numerous material evidence. The investigation collected an impressive volume of material, numerous conversation recordings, expert opinions, and witness testimonies. However, the key figure in the case became Jerry, an acquaintance of Jennifer's new boyfriend. His testimony in the courtroom proved to be decisive. Jerry reported how the accused returned to the crime scene and tried to eliminate evidence. For his cooperation in the investigation, he was freed from responsibility. The same decision was also made for her friend Charles, who, despite concealing evidence and destroying an important object, agreed to testify against his companion. In the trial, those who were with Jennifer in detention also testified. However, the defense insisted on the peaceful character of the accused and emphasized the absence of aggressive tendencies. To confirm this, Jennifer decided to give a speech. In her narrative, she described how she drove to Mike to pick up personal items. According to her words, he received her aggressively with an object in his hand, insulted her, and refused her entry. A scuffle developed over control of the crime object, during which the misfortune occurred. Jennifer claimed she defended herself because she feared for her safety. However, her version contradicted the facts. Mike was found sitting in the armchair, not at the entrance. The experts presented evidence for the intentionality of the actions. The experts determined that the distance between the object and the person was about 3 centimeters. On the 1st of February 2019, the jury retired for deliberation. The court found Jennifer guilty on all charges: serious crime, theft, and evidence tampering. She received the maximum sentence without possibility of early release. Throughout the entire trial, she showed no remorse. The trial was particularly difficult for Mike's son. He said several times that he could not forgive the accused for destroying their family. His child remained without a grandfather, and he himself without a father. Their last conversations with the father were overshadowed by conflicts, and this situation can now no longer be corrected. In the city of Mansfield, Ohio, with a population of about 50,000 people, lived the successful osteopath Jack Boyle. Thanks to his professionalism, he had built one of the most renowned practices in the state. Every 13th resident of the city sought out Dr. Boyle. At the time of the described events, Jack and his wife Norine had been married for more than 2 decades. They had 2 children, son Collier and Elizabeth, whom they had recently adopted from Taiwan. Norine Schmidt grew up in a simple working family in Philadelphia. She worked as a dental hygienist and supported her husband during his medical studies. After the family grew, she devoted herself to housekeeping. Thanks to Jack's successful career, the family lived in prosperity. Behind the facade of prosperity, however, a completely different picture was hidden. Dr. Boyle had a difficult character. He treated his wife disrespectfully and disregarded family bonds. Jack had a particular weakness for women and led a double life. Norine endured this situation for years and tried to keep the family together for the children. But sometimes even the most devious people who can hide their true nature are powerless against unexpected turns of fate, especially when their secrets come to light. The wife had to come to terms with this situation, as any objection met with fierce resistance. Dr. Boyle had a domineering character and accepted no criticism of his person. Their son Collier also had to experience this firsthand. The wife tried to keep the family together for the sake of the children, although her husband's behavior became increasingly challenging. The situation reached its peak when the inappropriate treatment of the son became obvious. In December 1890, Norine filed for divorce after 2 decades of marriage. But Jack did not want to lose his family life. In an attempt to save the marriage, he planned a move to Very, Pennsylvania, a city with about 100,000 inhabitants. It was planned to relocate not only the family but also the medical practice there. The new location was about 3 hours' drive from their house in Mansfield. In mid-December 1889, Jack often drove there under various pretexts. However, his efforts to convince his wife of a fresh start were not successful. Reality was far from his expectations. The only thing he could achieve was to persuade Norine to stay until after New Year and postpone the decision about family matters until after the holidays. The whole family celebrated the New Year 1990 in Mansfield. The spouses, their children, and Jack's mother Christina had gathered together. He asked her to watch the children as he planned a trip after midnight when everyone would be sleeping. Celebrating the New Year in the old house did not seem like a good choice, but Norine agreed for the sake of the children. As expected, an argument occurred between the spouses on the festive evening. The younger daughter did not quite understand the situation, while the older son seemed troubled. Christina put him to bed. Shortly before falling asleep, he suddenly heard a piercing female scream and 2 loud blows against the wall, after which it became quiet. The boy was so frightened that he pretended to be asleep and remained lying like that until morning. On the morning of the 1st of January, the son left the bedroom when everything in the house had become quiet. He searched in all the rooms but found his mother nowhere. Dr. Boyle looked as if he had not lain down at all. When the son asked the father about the mother's whereabouts, he informed him that she had left after the argument. He assured that she would return soon, and grandmother Christina confirmed his words. But the days passed, and Norine did not appear. Shelley, Norine's close friend, who had kept particularly close contact with her recently because of the family problems, immediately doubted the version of voluntary departure. They were supposed to meet for lunch in early January to have an important conversation, but it did not happen. When Norine did not appear for the meeting, the friend became restless and sensed that something was wrong. Such behavior did not fit Norine's character at all, especially since this meeting was extremely important. They were supposed to discuss serious plans. Shelley repeatedly said that her friend would never just leave like that and abandon her little ones. With these thoughts, she went to the police and reported Norine's disappearance. The law enforcement officers began with the usual phrases about the need to wait 72 hours and about how an adult has the right to go anywhere without accountability. But the situation was special. It concerned a caring mother who could not abandon her children, but they could not convince the police to begin the search. Finally, it was young Collier who reached for the phone book, looked up the number of the station and reported the strange absence of his mother. Only then did the officers react and come to the Boyle family house. When Lieutenant David Messmer was in their house for the first time, he was affected by Collier's anxious look. In the boy's eyes could be read a silent plea for help. A conversation with him was not possible, but it was clearly visible how he trembled when the father appeared. When Jack asked the policeman about the source of the call, the investigator decided not to reveal the truth and said someone from Norine's family had called. Despite all the disturbing signs, the officers believed the words of the respected doctor, Boyle, that his wife had simply left after an argument. Everyone accepted this story, except David Messmer, who found the doctor's behavior suspicious. After Norine was reported missing, weeks passed. David Messmer doubted the credibility of this version from the beginning. People knew Norine as an attentive, loving mother who would never abandon her children. After conversations with the missing person's relatives, the officers set out to examine Boyle's house in Mansfield. They examined all the rooms carefully but found nothing unusual. No signs of an incident could be found. During this visit, however, David managed to speak with Collier. The boy told in detail what he had heard on New Year's Eve, including a strange female exclamation and a blow against the wall. The lieutenant gained the firm conviction that Dr. Boyle had something to do with the mysterious disappearance of his wife. Collier's younger sister, who was still very small at the time, had possibly seen something important. She told the police that she had seen how the stepfather behaved strangely toward her mother, after which she lay on the floor, wrapped up like a snowman. Due to her young age, however, her statements were not considered in the investigation. However, there were many inconsistencies in the doctor's behavior. Shortly after his wife's disappearance, a new resident moved into their house, the pregnant Sherry Campbell. The doctor insisted he had only met her after his wife's disappearance and the expected child had nothing to do with him. He told everyone he had simply felt compassion for the single expectant mother and offered her a roof over her head. According to the doctor, his marriage had been broken for a long time. He planned to officially separate from his wife as soon as she would reappear, but she did not come back, which troubled Collier greatly. In conversations with the missing person's relatives, David Messmer revealed interesting details from Dr. Boyle's private life. It turned out that his relationship with Sherry Campbell began much earlier than he had admitted. There were suspicions that he was the father of her expected child. Norine still could not be found, and the theory of her voluntary departure became increasingly unlikely. For several weeks there had been no activity, no purchases, no use of bank cards, no communication with relatives or children. Lieutenant Messmer encountered resistance in his work. His colleagues tended to believe the words of the respected doctor, Jack Boyle. However, when examining the house and the events of the last days before Norine's disappearance, David Messmer discovered a remarkable fact. When the purchase of the new apartment was handled, Norine was according to witness statements in Mansfield. The meeting with the realtor confirmed the investigators' suspicions. With Jack was Sherry, who had used Norine's documents. This fraud case provided occasion for a conversation with the doctor's pregnant new companion. She knew about the years of affairs that Norine had endured. According to Sherry, she was supposed to be the last straw that made Norine leave the family. The new chosen one did not doubt Jack's innocence in the disappearance. She claimed their relationship had only begun after the wife's disappearance. which clearly contradicted the facts. Unexpected help with the investigation came from a jeweler who urgently requested a meeting. Out of fear of being near his father, the young man one day searched the glove compartment of the car, where he found a photo of Sherry that was taken shortly before the New Year celebrations. This photo could be handed over to David Messmer. In the background, the new house in Erie could be seen, which the investigators wanted to visit. However, Dr. Boyle refused the inspection of the building. For an official search warrant, serious grounds were required. Investigator Messmer had no sufficient evidence. The long absence of the woman raised more and more questions. After the discovery of irregularities in the house purchase, the investigators gained access to Jack's banking transactions. It turned out that during his wife's alleged disappearance, he made strange purchases. Among other things, he rented heavy construction equipment, bought many cleaning supplies, and acquired quick hardening cement. Additionally, Jack frequently refueled in Erie. Presumably, he regularly visited the new house. Now, the investigation's attention focused on the recently acquired property. Since no traces were found in the former house of the Boyles, the suspicion arose of a connection between the new house and the incident. An unexpected turn occurred on the eve of the property inspection in Erie. Collier contacted investigator Messmer and informed him that he had noticed jewelry on Sherry's finger that belonged to his mother. In conversation with his father, he openly expressed his suspicions and accused him of involvement in his mother's disappearance. After this tense conversation, Jack suggested driving to the neighboring state the next day to get some fresh air. When the police arrived at Jack's new house in Erie, they noticed extensive renovation work. Inside and outside the building, active work was underway. The owner was obviously preparing the apartment for the family's move. However, the investigators were not interested in the condition of the renovation. Investigator Messmer searched for any clues that could shed light on the woman's disappearance. The property was examined particularly thoroughly, given the remoteness of the location. The basement attracted special attention. Amid the unfinished renovation, a new carpet weighed down by furniture seemed out of place. When it was pulled away, a rectangle of fresh concrete was revealed. This area looked suspicious, and the police decided to examine it. After the first damage to the surface, a characteristic smell appeared. When the area was completely exposed, the investigators found what they were looking for. The criminalists determined that the person found was the missing Norine. The news about Norine's fate deeply shook her relatives, especially her son Collier. He was very attached to his mother. She was not only a parent to him, but also his closest confidant. In this difficult situation, there was at least one favorable circumstance. Investigator Messmer could intervene in time, and the boy did not have to drive with his father to the forest, where a dangerous situation could have arisen. Collier was placed in the custody of the Youth Welfare Office. The mother's relatives lived far away, were already elderly, and could not come to support their grandson. The father's relatives were outraged that the boy expressed suspicions against Jack. All of this became an additional burden for Collier. When examining the crime scene in the house in Erie, the police discovered an expensive watch on Norine that helped with identification. The relatives confirmed that the watch belonged to her. It was noteworthy that the wedding ring was missing from her hand. The investigation had to clarify the circumstances of the incident. According to the expert's assessment, everything happened on New Year's Eve. The investigators questioned all possible witnesses, including the couple's neighbors. Important information was provided by the neighbor of the new house. That night, he was awake until 4 a.m. and noticed strange activities in Dr. Boyle's house in Erie. Jack arrived there after 3 a.m. and carried some large bags. The investigators suspected that it could be soil and construction debris from work on the concrete floor. During the investigation, the investigators spoke a lot with young Collier, who had suspected something about his father from the beginning. It was noteworthy that Sherry wore jewelry that resembled the missing ring. Collier remembered this jewelry well because of a special story his mother had told him. Therefore, he noticed it immediately on Sherry's hand. Later, it turned out that Dr. Boyle had indeed given this ring to his new acquaintance. When Sherry learned about this, she immediately broke off contact with him. The events took a disturbing turn. According to the investigators, on New Year's Eve when the conflict began, Jack Boyle asked his mother to watch Collier. Even before the celebration, the doctor had reported urgent matters in Erie, where he wanted to drive with his wife. The grandmother and Collier became unwilling witnesses to what happened. Later, however, the woman defended her son and claimed to have heard nothing unusual and denied her grandson's statements. In conversations with the investigators, Collier reported an argument between his parents before bedtime. They argued loudly. When he woke up from noise and banging against the wall, he heard a frightening silence. In Collier's memory, the moment when his father froze in the doorway and stared long and intensely into the room remained forever imprinted. In those minutes, he pretended to be asleep, as he intuitively sensed the threatening danger. Even after years, these memories made Collier shudder. He often thought about how the events would have developed if his father had learned that he was not sleeping in those moments and was a witness to the entire incident. The version of Norine's voluntary disappearance seemed absurd to her family. She was too reasonable for such thoughtless actions. Nevertheless, many police officers initially believed Jack's words. This confusion worked in Dr. Boyle's favor for a while, but eventually turned against him. So incredible the story seemed. This was not the only weakness in his defense, but it took time to uncover the others, and much was clarified by the young witness's testimony. The doctor proceeded very carefully. He had cleaned up the house so thoroughly that the experts found no traces of the incident. Even in his car, no evidence was discovered. Apparently, he proceeded very methodically. The events developed quickly and everything pointed to careful advance planning. When examining the weeks after Norine's disappearance, the investigators found other indirect evidence that could not be hidden. For example, he had rented a powerful jackhammer 2 days before the incident. Everything pointed to careful preparation. In the stores, the man bought cleaning supplies and quick-drying cement. At the same time, according to the neighbor, he began strange activity in the basement room of the house. The neighbor noticed how the future house resident actively transported large bags. It turned out that about 1 ton of crushed concrete and soil was removed from the basement. The investigations later revealed the true purpose of this work. Dr. Boyle transported all the construction debris with his pickup to an abandoned property that belonged to Sherry's uncle outside the city. The land had not been used for a long time, so he unloaded the debris there without concern. This became one of his few mistakes. When the investigators found and examined the debris, they could confirm that the concrete actually came from Boyle's basement. The investigators suspected that Jack wanted to avoid a divorce that could have caused him serious financial problems. The prosecution had gathered solid evidence against him, and the main witness became Collier. The young Collier was aware of the significance of his testimony against his father in court. His witness statements would, in the opinion of the prosecution, practically guarantee that Jack would go behind bars. But for the young witness, this was a severe trial. Besides the emotional burdens, Collier faced further difficulties. He came under the guardianship of the state of Ohio, moved from family to family, some of which were problematic. Additionally, he was separated from his sister. At school, young Boyle was teased by his classmates because of his father's deed. This lasted about a year until he came to a caring foster family, albeit separated from his sister. He could not forgive his father for destroying their family through his actions. Constant worry became part of his daily life. Nevertheless, he was firmly determined to achieve justice for his mother. The defense of Dr. Boyle had prepared weighty arguments. Above all, the lawyers tried to undermine the prosecution's strategy. They pointed to violations in dealing with the main witness. The first conversation took place in the presence of the grandmother. Then there were further meetings and conversations with investigator Messmore. Some interrogations were conducted without the presence of adult representatives, which the lawyer rightly viewed as a violation. The defense also suspected that the investigators during these conversations might have pushed towards certain conclusions about the father's guilt. The non-compliance with important procedures could indeed weaken the prosecution's position. Jack looked for all possibilities to justify himself. He even persuaded his brother to make a false statement. He agreed and claimed that Norine had contacted him on the 2nd of January 1990, although this was impossible. When she was still considered missing, this significantly hindered the investigation. Later it turned out that these statements were false. Dr. Boyle's brother could, however, escape punishment for perjury. Jack's reputation as a successful osteopath helped maintain his positive image in society. Apart from his weakness for young women, people saw in him a worthy family father and attentive doctor. In their family, there was an adopted daughter, and Jack had nothing against family additions. Sherry Campbell was expecting a baby, and the investigation confirmed Jack's paternity. During the investigation, many questions arose about the doctor's young companion. The investigators considered whether she might have known about her chosen one's plans or even helped him cover up traces. The suspicions were reinforced by her involvement in a dubious real estate transaction. The real estate agent confirmed that a young lady who resembled Sherry came with Dr. Boyle. However, the investigation found no evidence of the young woman's involvement in the incident with Norine or even of her knowledge of Dr. Boyle's intentions. In court, she testified against her lover and broke contact with him. The doctor's defenders tried to challenge every accusation. They pointed to inaccuracies in the medical report that were connected to the description of the eyes. A series of appeals followed that delayed the trial. As a result, an additional investigation had to be conducted. The lawyers even tried to prove that the find in the basement was connected to the previous house residents. But the renewed investigation confirmed Norine's identity and strengthened the prosecution's position. When the jury withdrew for deliberation, tension prevailed in the courtroom. On the 6th of July 1990, Dr. Boyle was taken to the prison of Ohio. He was found guilty of the intentional crime against his wife under aggravating circumstances. The court imposed a life sentence without possibility of early release. The story continued to develop through the defense's appeals. In the year 2010, Jack Boyle filed an application for review of the verdict with the possibility of early release. Initially, it was rejected, but after renewed examination, he was granted the right to release after 20 years. The lawyers continued the fight. At the hearings in the year 2020 about possible early release, Boyle's version of events unexpectedly changed. After almost 30 years of denying any involvement in the incident with his wife, he suddenly decided to acknowledge partial responsibility. His new story appeared unbelievable, however. It became obvious that this was an attempt to mitigate the punishment and leave the detention facility. In Dr. Boyle's words, no sincere remorse could be felt. In the new version, he claimed that during an argument, he had accidentally pushed his wife, whereupon she had fallen unluckily. The man evaded explanations about other circumstances that indicated a planned character of the incident. Ultimately, the application was rejected, and he remained in custody. The next opportunity for early release Jack will have in October 2025. However, his attitude has changed significantly. After Jack's imprisonment, the relatives completely broke contact with Collier. Norine's relatives could not care for the child due to their advanced age. A couple from Canada took him into their family. They surrounded him with warmth and attention. When he became an adult, Collier changed his father's surname to Landry. For a time, he worked as a model and posed for magazines. Later, he found his calling in film and became a successful cameraman in Los Angeles. In collaboration with a well-known director, he created a documentary film in the year 2018. The film told the story of his mother, Norine Boyle, and his own path to liberation from the difficult past. During filming, almost 3 decades after the verdict, Collier met his father in prison. At the meeting, Jack claimed everything had happened accidentally during an argument when Norine had allegedly threatened him with a knife, and he had only reacted instinctively. Collier did not accept this version, but could find the strength to forgive his father. Jack, however, continues to bear resentment against his son and does not recognize him as part of his family.